patients. But if the diagnosis is primarily chronic fatigue syndrome, then there is no evidence that antidepressants work. And I think that line of treatment would be unhelpful because it may actually alienate the patient, particularly if they don't feel that they're depressed.
Right. Now, on that idea about alienation, this is something that we often find in primary care. You know, we're trying to tell this person that it's a psychological problem. They're trying to tell us it's a physical problem.
Yes, yes.
How do we manage that situation?
Yeah.
Here is another chance for discussion. When the stop caption appears, we would like you to stop the video and discuss how the GP can avoid arguments with.
I think first of all avoiding the term psychological, because it's unhelpful and it seems to me to mean lots of different things to different people. And usually patients think that you think it's all in their mind if you use the term psychological. Other people think that there's something lurking in the cupboard as yet undiscovered that is creating this problem. And of course that's, I think, in their mind a bit silly.
Right.
So I think it's best to avoid the term psychological altogether.
Right.
And just think about the problem in terms of how physiological, cognitive and behavioural factors are working together. And if you think about how what you do influences your symptoms, then it leads on to effective practical management strategies.
Could you perhaps expand on the physiological, cognitive and behavioural sides of how you would assess and how you would begin to start explaining the diagnosis to the patient?
Well, I think the diagnosis is quite clear, and we know that patients like to be given a specific diagnosis. So I think just saying that yes, you do seem to fulfil the criteria of chronic fatigue syndrome is adequate. And I think the way the GP described the similarities between chronic fatigue syndrome and ME was fine.
Right.
And I think seemed to satisfy the patient well enough.
Yeah.
In terms of explaining how the way in which you behave influences your symptoms, I think you would start off by just asking them maybe to go away and keep a diary of their activities with a view to changing the way in which they manage their activities on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
So that will then influence how they're feeling. Although, of course, these changes the patient will feel often takes quite a long time.
Thanks for coming back. Now, what I wanted to do today was to go over with you how we're going to try and look at ways of improving the situation and helping you with your symptoms, which essentially is a practical approach, and the reasoning behind this is to try and break down the worry you have about undertaking an activity, then feeling absolutely awful, you know, shattered and tired, and then worrying about doing it again and feeling you need to rest. The idea is that if we can break that down by you working out some structured activity that you can undertake, that you will actually start little by little to feel better and feel less fatigued, because what's actually happened is that you've got yourself caught up in a vicious circle. So, you know, the more you do, the worse you feel, the less you feel like doing, so you rest, and then obviously if you do rest and you don't use your muscles, you know, they don't like it if you start using them again and undertaking activity. So that's, if you like, the sort of basic thinking behind trying to plan an approach for you and help you improve.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Kinda does. It's slightly worries me when you say worry, though, because it almost makes it feel like it feels like more than just worry about things getting worse. You know, when I do undertake something, it genuinely makes me feel that. I don't think it's just worry.
No, I'm not suggesting that it is just worry. I understand that, you know, there is a genuine physical tiredness and fatigue going on, but if you like, what I'm saying is that what you will need to do is undertake some of the activities that you know are likely to make you feel bad, and accept that even if you do feel bad, as long as you do it in a structured way and at regular intervals, that it will help. Now, it may be something like just taking 3-5-minute walks.
Right. Because I was going to say I've tried that. You know, I used to do quite a lot of swimming and go to the gym and stuff. And a couple of weeks ago, I thought, okay, I could do some exercise because I'm aware that I'm losing strength. So I tried to go swimming, and it knocked me out for 3 days. So
when you were at the pool, what did you actually do? I mean, how much did you try and do?
I did what I used to do. I went and, you know, I did about 20 lengths, which is never was a problem for me before.
Okay. Well, I think what would probably happen then is that you probably pushed yourself a bit too far, and that you tried to do too much. And what I'm suggesting is that if you start off just doing a very little and gradually build it up, that it won't have that kind of effect. As I said before, you may still feel tired, but you shouldn't feel so awful. And this is a process that's going to take, you know, some weeks. It's not, you can't expect to get back to full activity very quickly. We're looking at probably months of doing this, of gradually building back up. But the critical thing is to do it consistently and spread out, not to kind of rush off and do, as you said, you know, you did the 20 lengths, because that would make you feel awful.
Kind of sound. I mean, practically, how would it work? What kind of things are you suggesting that I do?
Well, in order to come up with a sensible plan of action for you, what would be really, really helpful is if you could keep a diary of the activity that you're currently undertaking. So what I'm talking about is a day-by-day account where you write down hour by hour what you're actually doing. So, for example, you don't need to do anything special. If you just get a piece of paper and you rule it up, and you have, say, the hours of the day, you know, the time down one side, so 9, 10, 11, etc. And then the days of the week, you know, Monday, Tuesday, etc. And just, if you roughly rule the paper up, or, you know, if you've got a diary at home, you could use that. And then each hour just make a very, very brief note, you know, had a rest, read the paper, went for a walk, whatever.
Right, so you basically want to know what I'm doing.
Yeah, so throughout the day, keeping a diary of it, then that would give me some idea of what you're basically able to do at the moment. And then if you and I met again in about 2 weeks' time, we can go through that, and then we can build on that, and I can give you advice about what sort of activities you could start increasing gradually, so that it would be it's a very practical exercise.
Trudy, what's the rationale for this activity scheduling that the GP's just shown us?
Well, it's really important that the patient keeps a detailed diary of their activities and their rest throughout the day, so that you can then reorder all of the activities so that they become more consistent. So it's important that you ask the patient to break up their activities into small chunks, evenly spread throughout the day, so that the patient is then breaking the association between the symptoms that they're experiencing and the activity. Because people tend to get into the habit of stopping activity when they feel tired. So then, of course, the symptoms are controlling them rather than them being in control of the symptoms.
Right, yes.
So then you can see what they're doing and use that as a baseline for asking them to practice specific goals that you agree in the session.
Right. Now, going back a step, could you just perhaps tell us a bit more about why a diary is being used in this particular situation? What's the model behind it?
Well, it's important to make a clear distinction between the factors which contributed to the problem in the first place. Most people will mention a virus, but it's usually that in conjunction with a number of other things. And then factors which keep the problem going once it's started. And the factors which keep the problem going are usually people reducing their activity, because they're fearful that if they carry on with their activity, then it will make the problem worse.
I see. Right.
So what you're doing is asking them to reorder their activities, so that so it's no longer symptom dependent.
Yes. Now, is there something else that we would wish the patient to keep a record of by using a diary?
Well, it would be very helpful for them to keep a specific detailed diary of their sleep routine.
Right.
Here's another discussion point. When the stop caption appears, stop the video and discuss what kind of advice GPs should give to patients about their sleep.